One of the first required documents that we're going to encounter is your Declaration of Independence. So we're going to look at the Declaration of Independence. We're not going to actually spend our time reading through this whole thing, but we want to master the ideas behind the Declaration of Independence, because that's the important thing that you guys will need to know for our AP test. So I'm going to take a look at the very beginning here. I'm sure you have heard this part before. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. This is what we're calling the Preamble to the Declaration of Independence. And this is the beginning, these two paragraphs here, which have the famous phrases. These are really just Thomas Jefferson's explanation of what it is that is the political philosophy of the group of people running the colonies. So he's trying to set us up with the ideas that form the basis of what will become the United States government. And so let's get to the famous part that you definitely know here. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I hope you guys are picking up on a little bit of plagiarism there. This is a clear copy of John Locke's ideas that we were talking about earlier. This is a clear use of the idea of natural rights. It's the exact same thing. These are rights that you have because you are a human. Because in his case, he's justifying this, saying that a creator gives you these rights, but you have three main rights: life, liberty, and Locke would say property. Jefferson says happiness here. So this is a clear use of John Locke's ideas that he wrote about many years before that. In this same paragraph, Jefferson is going to go on to say that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, meaning those natural rights, when the government does not protect those rights that you have, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form. This is another just copy of Locke's idea. This is like Locke is a tremendous influence on Jefferson here, because now what Jefferson is saying is that because the government has failed to protect these three rights that we all have, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that the people have a right and have a duty to get rid of that form of government and replace it with a form of government that works for them. So this is what we'll call the Preamble to the Declaration of Independence. And this is an expression of a political philosophy by Thomas Jefferson. And he's establishing the ideas that form the foundation of what will become the American government. Now, the longest part of the Declaration of Independence is a very long list of problems that Thomas Jefferson has with King George III, who is the King of England and therefore the King of the colonies here. And so he makes a very long bullet point list of problems with the king. So I want to read the first one. The king has refused to assent to his laws. So the king does not follow his own laws. This is a problem to Jefferson. When Jefferson is listing a problem with the king and telling us, like, here's something the king does wrong, we can infer that if Jefferson were able to design a government, he would want to design a government in which the king or whatever leader of the government would not have that power. So even though this very long list of problems with King George III is specific to King George and his actions, what Jefferson is doing here is he's creating a list of what should be reasonable limits on government power. So we can assume that if Jefferson is angry that the king doesn't follow his own rules, that if Jefferson were to have control over designing the president of the United States and his powers, that the president would be forced to follow the laws just like everyone else. And so what's happening with this list of grievances here is that Jefferson is explaining what limits he feels like should be imposed on the government. So this long list of problems with King George III is actually useful to us because they're building their own ideas of an ideal limited government. When the framers are writing the Constitution, they spend a lot of time putting in writing clear limits on things that the government is not allowed to do. We know that that's an important motivation of the guys that are writing the Constitution, is they want to make sure that there are limits, not just limits on government power, but that these limits are written down so that you and I can read them today, so that regular people can know where the government power should be stopped.